Well, happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to another live rare conversation. And I'm looking forward to today's conversation, Danielle. For those of you guys who are watching us live for the first time, either on YouTube or Twitter or on Facebook or even Instagrams, it might be still there. Not possible yet, but I think we're live streaming on there too. The purpose of these calls every single week is simply to provide you with tools and resources to live your best life, not just personally, but also professionally. Um, Danielle and I have been working with leadership and studying leadership and mindset and relationships for, gosh, I think it's been at least for 20 years for me, at least, maybe 25. But today's topic is a topic that's like really near and dear to my heart, and that is year in reflection. Now, there was a quote by Socrates, and he said this quote, and we're going to talk about this here um, in our discussion today. But Socrates' quote said, "A life unexamined is a life not worth living." Now, that's a pretty bold statement by the famous philosopher Socrates or Socrates, but a life unexamined is not a life worth living. And I think it's easy to get caught up in just, you know, go, 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 and not taking time to reflect and inspect how far you've came and where you're at. And so today we're going to talk about doing a year in reflection and how that can help you in terms of planning for the new year. So Danielle, we've done these year in reflections for a while now. First off, how has doing a year in reflection helped you?
I think for me last year, what like we've done them a couple of years now, but like this last year really struck home with me, I think, because we were coming out of everything was locked down and it helped to give us actually a perspective of like what was going on in our life and how we were rushing to this and that and different areas of our lives that like our health and fitness that may have slipped a little bit during that time, because I was like, well, what are you going to do? We'll just sit here. And that's pretty much what we did, was just sit around. We weren't taking the
Right.
exercise portion that we had been so adamant about prior years to that level still. So I think um, using last year going into this year was a big deal on how I was able to engage, which was we did a one word for our year end last year. This is our third year of doing that. So like taking that one word as my word, engage, and like figuring out how to apply that into everything that I did this year.
Yeah, I think when we take that time to reflect, I mean, and sometimes we don't want to reflect on what may have gone on, whether it be yesterday, last week, last month, last year, but when we take that time to just learn from our past, it can also give us an awesome boost, what you actually reference here, to move forward because it shows you how far you've come in life and where you can still go. Because a lot can change in a year, right? And I think too is that, I mean, I know I've been guilty of this myself, is I sometimes got so caught up in setting the next goal. I gotta set the next goal. I gotta set the next goal. I gotta set the next goal. That sometimes those weren't the right goals to set. Because I think if you always you keep on setting new goals, you might start to feel inadequate because you're really never ready then. At least that's how I would sometimes feel. Um, but reflecting on the past will actually help you see how far you've grown. So it's going to be December 1st tomorrow.
Mhm.
And I don't think you can create some magical light or switch on some magical light on the January 1st and say, okay, let's do it all now. I think you got to start building some momentum now because they say on average it's going to take you 60 days to create momentum for yourself, right? In reflecting on this past year, like what are some things that you're intending to do over the next couple of weeks to prepare yourself to do a proper planning session for the next year?
I think, well, we had kind of talked back like about this 60 days ago when we were at like 62 days to the end of the year. Um,
Right.
because it's important to like keep that. And I think even though we had done quarterly planning, it's like just because we're on the last month of the year doesn't mean that I can't plan for a quarter, because I think that momentum and that to drive with that, that's like why it's important to like continually always be looking at what your goals are. And for me, like some of the things that I'm going to do is I'm on my third journal already for just this year. And that's something
Wow,
that I
I didn't know
try
that.
to maintain consistently, like journaling, like different things that I'm grateful for every single day and like what's been happening, like what was working, what wasn't working, how I was feeling at that time. And now just going back and reflecting on all that over the next couple of weeks, like when I was hitting the stride, like what was I doing those days that kept me so consistent to what my goals were. And so now I can take that and say, okay, these were the 5 things that I was really consistent on every single day. That's going to help me whatever my new goals are for this next year, and kind of take that. And then also we do the one word reflection and, really looking at like, how did I live that out this last year? What areas um, could I have, like, what went well and what didn't go well? Like, what areas did I thrive in and what areas did I didn't? Because I think learning from both of those is what's going to help continue to take me now through December into January, instead of just being like, oh, well, I'm just going to take this whole month of December off because we have this going on and that going on and holidays and celebrations and vacation coming up. Like, I'm just going to not do anything for this month. And that's just not going to happen. Like, I'm determined that this was going to be the year that I changed everything, um, because what I was doing before was not getting me goals and in a mindset and different place than I want it to be.
Yeah. But I also think there might be some people watching here today or listening to this, and they might be going, I didn't really set goals for myself this year. Like, how do I do a reflection if I really didn't set goals or may have set them and they lasted for 20 days in January of 20, what year are you in? 2021, right? 2021. What about for those people? Because I've been there, done that too, right?
Yep. I think it's important to, are you where you want to be? Like, if you aren't happy with where you're at, then that's part of probably why you didn't stick to those goals. And that's where I was. I was like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, but I didn't have that game plan to necessarily follow through on it, or a big enough reason why those things were important to me. And so I think it's important to reflect, like, are the things you're saying that are important to you really that important to you, or is there something else that's holding you back from that? And I think using that as your reflection, like, I started out with good intentions, but what happened and why did that happen? And I think those are reasonable things to look at when reflecting back if you didn't set goals, and why you didn't set goals. And if you're happy with where you're at and you don't want to change anything, then that's something to reflect on too.
hmm Well, when we think about being a rare leader, and for like you said, for those of you guys who are joining us for the first time, rare actually stands for something. It's a leader who is resourceful, adaptable, resilient, and willing to engage with others as a leader. They stand out, and they're willing to do these things to lead because they know what they do does make a difference. And I think too is that when I look back, I'm looking at, okay, what are the most important goals that I achieved this past year? 'Cause I use questions because all progress is preceded by a question. Right? Like when you go to a therapist, all they do is ask you questions. Right? They ask you questions. I think you got to unpack it a little bit. So what I tell people is grab yourself a cup of coffee or something of your favorite beverage, find a quiet place, and just get a notebook and start writing. And here are some of the questions that I use: is one, what's the most important goals I achieved this past year? Because I set some goals in January that I actually achieved in June. I was like, holy crap! Now, truth be told, in a couple of those, I took my foot off the gas a little bit, because I was way ahead of the pace. Another question you can ask yourself is, what inspired or excited you this year? So things that just got you fired up. What about for you? Like when you look at this past year, what was something that inspired you or got you excited?
I just think that, like, actually finally submitting to a process and not trying to do my own thing. And so when I was having results with that, like, that was exciting. Like, really, like fully engaging in the process and not worrying about the end result, but just day to day, the things that I could do and win at. And that's what motivated me and kept me excited to continue to pursue the goals that I had.
Yeah. So for those of you guys who are watching, go feel free to put in the comments what inspired you, excited you this past year. What got your juice going? Like, all right, like it was extra fun. What did you enjoy the most? Also, might be thinking, what do you want to do more of in your life? Like, we got an upcoming trip coming up here in this month. Like in 2022, I intend for us to do even more traveling. It's a done deal. Um, you touched on this earlier, some of the low points too. This is stuff like we want to go ahead and sweep underneath the rug. We don't want to revisit them, but it's still a thought. Until it's out of here, it's going to remain in here, you know? And I think sometimes when we're going through a year in reflection and actually getting honest with ourselves, it's like when you sit down with your accountant and you're a business owner, you have to go through all your expenses and like, holy crap, like I thought I did a lot better, or I did a lot better than I thought, you know? You got to do an inventory of your business. The same thing as taking an inventory of your life. So, what were some of the low points? You know, when did you feel like nothing worked? Like, what made you feel like you failed?
There were a couple times that like I just took my eye off what the goal was and things started to kind of slide sideways. And instead of getting upset with myself this time and beating myself up and feeling guilty because I wasn't doing something, I learned to accept it and forgive myself for it. Like it's okay. I'm human. Let's correct it. Let's instead of sitting there and just letting everything go backwards and then having to start over at ground zero, like just accept where I was at that day and let's move forward. And I think the biggest thing was just saying, you know what, I forgive myself for allowing this to happen. Like I take 100% responsibility of what was going on and allowing that to just like be a line in the sand and like move forward from there.
No, that's a tough thing to accept versus defend. And you're right, because it's easy to just beat ourselves up of what we didn't do. In other words, what we said that we were going to do. Like, oh, I didn't do this. I didn't do this. It's like, and I'm not gonna lie. When you start doing this reflection, you start going through. You might feel like a little crummy for a moment or two, and you might get even a little pissed off. But again, that's going to create momentum for you moving into the next year. You either win or you learn. You know, and that's the next thing I think is important to write down. Is like, what skills did you learn this year? You know, every year, whether we like to think it or not, we learn something new. And you don't have to get your master's degree to say you learned something new. What's a skill that you learned this year?
I think not so much learning, but like accepting that I am a very type A personality and like to have structure in my days. And it used to drive me crazy that you'd be like, you need to have a schedule. You need to like write out things that you need to do. And it literally would drive me nuts because I'm like, I'd look at you and you're just like, oh, okay, well, we're just gonna do this and that and like fly off, like just nonchalantly like plans change and like okay it's whatever. Like I really learned that the best way for me to thrive is to have that process and to be able to follow step by step something that's proven that's going to work and just learn the patience from it. So I guess that's something I learned was the patience portion of not everything's going to magically happen in a day. Like just trusting the process and being patient and like knowing that the little things that I do matter.
Yeah. Well, at least I got to some recording now, everyone, that she has now embraced having a daily plan. I mean, this call was worth just saying for you to say it out loud alone. I think the thing that I learned is to use the resources I have at my fingertips more often. I love buying books. I love, gathering new information. I may not even read that book for a year or two. I remember I got the book called Just Do It, the I was just doing it. Or Shoe Dog, sorry, the memoir from Phil Knight. It took me like 3 years to read that book. I enjoyed it. I told like lots of people about it afterwards. I think that's one thing for me was just to realize, you know what? A lot of times you already have the resources you need to move forward, to achieve your goal. You just have to open up your eyes a little bit more. Um, Here's another thing. This is a fun question, in terms of doing a reflection for those of you guys again who are watching. Um, we do have a Rare Leader reflection sheet that you can go ahead and get from us. We'll go ahead and post this up later that you can go ahead and use just to start you out. I mean, we have a simple version and then we have the journal. It's two different versions of it. But this is a question that gets me smiling. Is what are your favorite things from this past year? It could be a book, a song, food, treat. I'll tell you what my favorite foods this last year was. It was just happened here over Thanksgiving. Danielle made this killer pumpkin cheesecake. Now she's renowned for her no bake cheesecake, but this was actually a baked cheesecake, and I had it. I'm like, wow, like that was a response from a lot of our family members. Like, you made this, Danielle? This is really good. That's one of the things I'm going to write down for my favorite things from this past year. What about for you?
I think some of my favorite things are us going for walks as families and or as a family, and just spending that time together and like having different pockets where we're like we intentionally made that time for one another.
Yeah. And those are the things you can duplicate, right? You can duplicate your pumpkin cheesecake. Just saying. Um, Here's another question of like, what are you grateful for? Because it's important to be grateful for the people that touch our lives, the time we get to spend on this planet, and the things that we get to experience. You know, and think about personally who you're grateful for or what you're grateful for, professionally, and also yourself. What about for you? I can tell you a few things I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for the 75 Hard program and your constant, interesting motivation for me to complete that program. What about for you?
I think I'm grateful for the opportunity to do these calls each week. I think that was one of the probably the biggest things as far as a confidence booster and like realizing that we do have an opportunity to share some of the stuff that we've been given. Um, and it's not always like probably the easiest thing to like talk and have conversations every week. But by being able to be consistent with it also helped the other little things that we were consistent with for myself anyway, to stay on point and on task and to keep those things in front of me.
Yeah. For me it was not only the extra little motivation, but really just getting an opportunity. I mean, I coached high school volleyball this year. I was grateful for that opportunity. It was a lot. It was, 5 nights a week in addition to what Ezekiel was doing. But it made me remember that every day we have an opportunity to make an impact. Every day. We like if we choose to make an impact, to make a difference, we can do it every day. And you don't know what kind of difference that may be. It may come in a shape or form that you completely didn't expect at all. You know? I mean, I think about like one of the things I'm grateful for is Daniil gives me little fun inspirational notes. And I have them on my computer desk here, but there's sometimes when she writes them, I'm like, how did you know that was what I was stated for my intention this morning? Like the universe collaborated for you to write that down. So I'm really grateful for that. Here's another question to think about, when you're doing your reflection, what are things you want to do more of? I'm
Or
asking you that one. I'm
asking me.
asking you.
Um, Things that I want to do more of, like I really enjoy us being able to work out together. So even if it's you on the bike and me on the treadmill, and something of that sort, or us going for a walk together. I just enjoy the time together. I don't necessarily think that it has to be us working out, but just to have that time together. And it doesn't have to be like a fancy date night out, like just the time together, whether we sit on the couch and we look at each other or we're going for a walk or doing something. Just that time together. Things as far as a family, I really enjoy our opportunities at our volleyball tournaments. I know for some people those can be long weekends, but I enjoy being in the moment with our family. Like that's I check my Facebook and Instagram like 0 times. Like I'm so focused on just being in the moment and enjoying like the volleyball and like watching and the excitement of being at the tournaments all day long. Like I know it's probably tiring for people to be there all day long, but I just enjoy that. Like I just enjoy that the whole world around us is shut out and we can just enjoy being in the moment. So those are some of the things that I look forward to this next year.
Yeah. I would concur with that. I said this earlier. One of the things I want to do more of is more traveling this year. I do like having the fancy dates, just like y'all know. But sometimes you just gotta create that space and that time for you either way. What are some things that you want to let go of? This is another deep reflection question, right? Like, what are some things that you want to let go of?
I think I started a little bit with like letting go of being on social media and like not paying so much attention to what's going on there because of the ridiculous amount of junk that's out there. I think that letting go of that and just like not even paying that much attention, like even as far as friendships, like there's some friendships that just had to get let go and like just accepting that and like realizing like what part of that played a role in my life getting to where I'm at now.
That's great. So as you all can see, like there's a handful of questions um, that you can ask yourself, but just ask them. Take the time simply just to reflect on this year. And I tell you what, there's no such thing as writer's block because you are in control of moving that pencil or not, right? And just start writing, and then just think about this question in December 2022. What is it that you want to be celebrating? It's a year from now. What is it that that thing it could be regarding your health, it could be regarding your finances, it could be regarding your relationships, um, your spiritual connection, if that's something that is important to you, your community. Like, what things do you want to be celebrating in those areas come December 31st, 2022? And future cast it and write it out. I tell you what, if you want to get some momentum from December and going into January and be ready to rock and roll, take some time to reflect because I promise you, you'll get to do that. You'll also have an opportunity to really set some really good goals going to New Year. So as we wind up Danielle here, final thoughts.
Final thoughts, like don't forget that we still have 31 days left of December. There's 31 days that you can still be working on towards your goals. It doesn't mean that you have to stop. We're just saying like let's start reflecting on what we can start implementing into the next quarter, and use this December as your month one for your quarter. Like this way you have 3 months of activity, like these are the goals that I want to accomplish, but yet just to reflect on where you were at the beginning of the year, to be able to celebrate those wins and to acknowledge those losses that you had so that you can work on ways that you can continue that winning streak, and to get away from the things that maybe were holding you back, and like being able to acknowledge those is a big key. And so I think using still December, like we still have 31 days of this year to hit any of those goals that we were working on for at the beginning of the year. They're just one step closer. If you would on December 31st, if you hadn't hit it, you are one step closer to making those happen, come in January right away.
Well said. I'll just say this. Why not be that person that when January 1st comes around, people go, well, what's your New Year's resolution? And you can be the person that says, well, I actually started mine in December.
Mm.
Get that month started. Well, again, everyone, thank you for joining us. Feel free to send an invite to be part of our private Facebook community, the Real Leader Facebook group. Again, we're on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. We might be streaming on Instagram yet. I have to double check that. But we appreciate you guys investing your time here. If there's any topics that you would like us to share more on or just have a discussion on, like literally we just had a conversation Danielle and I did, and I learned some things. So I appreciate you guys all. Otherwise, onward and upwards. Until next time, see you next week.